On your orders, Commander. Discipline is the guarantor of victory.
Power sickness. This is something that other YouTubers aren't going to tell you about. What is it? Power sickness is when you put Percy on an artillery unit. Power sickness is when you put
In battle, the only voice that matters
White
is
Wolf on a tank. Power sickness is when you use Sergeant Spanner as a captain on a tank or on an infantry unit.
Shush now.
Power sickness is when you use Bloody Mary. Power sickness is a strangely unique phenomena to this game. I identified it probably about 8 or 9 months ago. And I've been explaining it to people as best I can in Discord. And it's long overdue I produce a video on this for the people of HP and for the people of Salt. But more importantly, this time it's for you guys who play this game who aren't in the Alliance. Because this is something I don't see get talked about on YouTube. Admittedly, I do not spend a lot of time on YouTube watching Warpath content. I use it to watch other things. So I don't really follow a lot of Warpath YouTubers. But in the 3 years I've been playing Warpath and following the occasional YouTuber, I've not once seen them discuss power sickness. People who want to have high power rating instead of efficiency. Now, in order to understand my concept and where I'm coming from here, we're going to do a little thought experiment, little thought exercise, as it were. Every time you unlock a piece of technology, every time you upgrade a building, and every time you invest a statue, you gain a power point. Now, those power points can be different. For example, if I was to upgrade this airbase now, I would gain 115,000 power. But what does that translate into? A number underneath my portrait. What do I gain out of it? If I was to go up to level 29. Scout plane speed. Well, the scout plane's not in use. Do I need to go any higher? No. It's a complete waste of investment. It's a complete waste of time. Just to see my power level increase. I mean, I go from level 28 to level 32. I more than triple my power. I go from 218 to 694 just on this one base. So I could go up basically 500,000 in power. So people who often get hung up on their power are suffering from power sickness. Now I can hear what some of you are going to say, but surely an awakened officer is better to field than a skill 1 officer. If you haven't been watching my PvP videos, I recommend going back to the Cairo video, the first PvP video I did, about 6 months ago, or however many months ago, 4 months ago. Because in that video, Maestro was only skill level 1, and I was knocking out tanks left, right and centre with a officer designed to be used on the anti-tank gun. It was more efficient for me to have an anti-tank gun officer on the anti-tank gun with a level 1 skill than it was for me to have Percy on there, because Percy only increases the damage by 25%. Oh, ooh, that sounds great. Yeah, but I get bonuses to penetration damage from having Maestro, and I get skill damage from having Maestro. The skill damage coefficient is a multiplier of the unit's damage output. So I'm going to be getting more than 25%. So, is there any way I can show this to you in real terms? Generally, the easiest way for me to show you would be in the arena, and for some reason I'm rank 14th. Here you go. This bit is unplanned. I was just going to find a random one to show you. This guy is 144 million in power. I'm 135 million in power, but as we know in the arena, that doesn't actually translate. So let's open this up. I'm 70 million, he's 144. Let's have a look at his formations. I reckon he's got Percy in there. Oh, there's a fucking surprise. There we go. Look. You guys are going to not even fucking believe me that I said this is unplanned. I literally said putting White Wolf on a tank. Now, a tank hunter is not a tank, but in terms of the tech tree, it comes under the class of tank. Helicopter comes under the class of tank in the tech tree. And I literally said putting this officer specifically on a tank. And I said putting this officer as a captain on a tank, and I said putting this officer in on an artillery piece, but this guy has stuck it on a fucking helicopter. Look at this. We've got all awakened officers. Every single one of them is awakened. How many of these officers, how many of them should they have actually been using? Well, Antonia is artillery. That's inefficient. That's a complete waste of time. You're just getting the 1,200 skill damage, the 25% skill damage bonus. You're not getting the artillery bonuses from either of these. You're getting a 25% bonus. You're getting health and HP, but you can train that into the officer. Why would you use it? We're getting 1,500 skill damage just from a 9.2 Apache.
You told me this would be rock and roll. Is the world after the war gonna be so exciting?
This one here is the only one that's close to being a decent unit, and this one here is close to being a decent unit. I don't know why you would want a high rate of fire officer on an MBT that's geared for shield. If you're gonna do 2 officers, 1 shield, 1 damage, you want 1 shield, 1 high damage. You don't need a high rate of fire on a tank unless you are gearing that tank to trigger skill damage, or you're using it to trigger critical strike damage, or you're using it to trigger a debuff. For shits and giggles, let's just fucking watch the video. My formation. These two, she's not even level 60. These are both skill level 1 officers. He's a skill level 1, skill level 1. He's nearly awakened. Skill level 1 on the aid and nearly awakened officer. So I'm half his power. I'm half his power. Let's have a look and see how well my army did against someone who was double. Oh dear. Looks like he might actually get through the infantry. Oh, that's going to be close, because the artillery isn't going to take a lot of damage. Mind you, that helicopter is not going to take a great deal of damage either, because it's not dealing a lot of damage. That is a perfect example of power sickness. That's someone who is not prioritizing efficiency over their power. Power merely represents everything you have unlocked as a total and have applied. Do not waste your time. Don't waste your time on unlocking stuff that you're not using. Don't waste your time using officers that have nothing to do with what you've got them attached to. Now, admittedly, some of you aren't going to give a shit about the arena. Fair enough. You don't care about the arena. But the arena is a really good place for you to test certain things that you might use in field play. And these two officers on that Apache do not make any sense. Sorry, that's not an Apache, that's a Tiger. So these two officers specifically don't make any sense. Neither does this one here. And we'll just go into the officers menu real quick. Okay, right. White Wolf. White Wolf sitting on a helicopter. White Wolf sitting on a fucking helicopter. Please take note of that helmet that says underneath Cluster Blast. Cluster Blast. Tosses an anti-armor grenade, dealing damage to an enemy of 1,200 damage coefficient and 30% damage to a random enemy within 2 map grids. If this officer is in an infantry troop, that skill does 25% additional damage. So we're only getting 1,200 coefficient damage. We're getting troop damage increase. This morale booster isn't applied because it's only applied to infantry. And this bunker booster is also not applied because that is also only applied to infantry. And Vengeance, which increases the tactical skill, just...
On your orders, Commander.
Get to the point.
It bugs me that people don't read things. I mean, I understand you might not be brilliant at the game, but you can read. You can associate symbols. Please stop suffering from power sickness. It's not difficult to read the skills. The whole reason why I started doing these officer videos was because I got tired of explaining this simple concept to people. Because every time I'd look at their setup, I'd be like, why are you using Percy? And the 9 times out of 10, they'd be like, she's awakened. And how does that benefit your main battle tank? Would be my next answer. Would be my next question. They'd be like, oh, well, you know, I get like extra HP. Train it in. You're not losing out. Oh, I'm getting the 1,200 damage coefficient plus firepower increase of 8%. Of 8%. A firepower boost of 8%. It's not like I can just roll Lady of Justice and get a firepower buff of 5% by virtue of sitting on my own territory. Okay, it's not shared with everyone else. But you get the point. You can train these skills in. That's what the train system is for. Firepower buff of 30%. He goes up to 50% if you put him on a light tank. It's a efficiency. Put him on a light tank. Yes, you can use him on a main battle tank. You can use him on a helicopter. You do have to sacrifice that 20% firepower bonus, and 20% is a lot of firepower to sacrifice. But you have to think about what you're gaining if you are going to deviate. I think I've made myself clear. Power sickness is just a representation of things you have unlocked and applied. You don't need to have 200 million power but somehow be as efficient as a wet paper bag in a hurricane. It's these videos that I produce are there to help you identify your individual failings. So if you've got like 6 awakened officers and you've just decided you're going to use all 6 regardless of what units you have, just so you have the highest amount of power, you're going to be like, oh, look how powerful I am, isn't that great? I'm like, no, not really. I've leveled bases that are 200 million plus, but they've fought like a mouldy sausage against the artillery. And then I've come up against bases that are 170 million that have absolutely wiped the floor with the tanks that have started the AG and subsequently wiped out the artillery. Efficiency is more important than your power. Power is just a simple ego. Guys, it's very, very important. You'll notice that I only have officers awakened that I need to use. Like, I'm not using these 4 officers down here. I'm not using Spanner, Percy, Wolf, or Adder. I'm not using them. And I would like to point out, I put statues into Adder to awaken him, to see how good he was at the start of all of this back in last summer. And yeah, he's got a good awakened ability, but his damage coefficient is so low that he's almost worth nothing. But I'm not going to use him just because it's like, hey, I need to have high power. No, I'm going to use him because if I need to use him, I need to use the penetration damage and I need to use the awakened skill. That's why I'm going to use him. But unless I'm in a situation where I need those 2 things, he's not going to get used. He is just going to be a training officer. He's going to be a training officer all day long. And it's the same with Winter Huntsman. Winter Huntsman can be a very good officer if you're prepared to use him as intended. And he is intended through this mechanic here, where he stuns the target for 2 seconds. So you're going to want to stick him on a really fast unit. But just awakening him and then sticking him on like an artillery unit just because you can doesn't make any sense. How are you using that artillery piece? Are you using the artillery piece to shell bases? Well, then the 1350 damage coefficient isn't going to be good enough.
Negotiate.
You can get this guy to level 3 just on his tactical skill, and he's dealing 1250 damage coefficient for your artillery piece. You get him up to level 4 and he's dealing 1500 damage coefficient. So he's going to be way more efficient on an artillery piece. And yeah, I've seen Winter Huntsman Awakened in an L4 where he's been on an artillery piece. And I'm like, that's great, mate. You've got extra power to your name. Do you think, as soon as I see that in the field, do you think I'm going to just go, oh, I'm not going to attack him, he's too powerful? No. No. I know what he does. I can open the skill, I can open the officer and I can check the skills. So can you guys. And you guys who are watching know exactly what I'm saying. If you've been watching my officer videos, you've started to cotton on to these things. You've started to see these things play out in game. And I love it. I genuinely love it when I come up against an enemy who I'm like, oh, he's not got awakened officers. What officers has he got? And then you see them attack and you're like, that's a really good idea. That's a fantastic officer setup. I love it. And it's making mincemeat of my army at the same time. Like, I don't love the fact that I'm losing, but that's cool. You know, you can do the same. You can be a good player with lower power. In fact, it's easier to be a good player with lower power because you end up baiting people in and end up squashing them when they attack your base. Like, oh, I can attack this guy. He's only got 90 million health, and it's like, ha 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 ha. Good joke. Tell it again to my artillery. Which does happen from time to time. Not so much now. Now I'm at 134, 135, but that's because natural progression. I have been unlocking things and leveling things up that are in line with my artillery. And if you are using tanks, or if you're using artillery, if you're using fighters, if you're using bombers, that is what you need to do. You need to focus your tech tree. You need to focus your officers. You don't need in the officer tree. Like, I see people, oh, I've got Golden Pixie awakened, I'll just stick her on the fighter, and I just want to go, why is she on a fighter? Because that's got a bombing symbol on it, that's got a bombing symbol on it, that's got a bombing symbol on it, and that's got a bombing symbol on it. So you're only getting a 15% damage bonus on that unit. You'd be literally better off just training that skill onto Nagarani, and it's like, instantly dealing more damage. Instantly. It's like, I don't want to use her because she's not awakened.
My beauty. It's been a long time since.
It just gets me every time, and I genuinely can't believe that I was talking smack about this, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just go, while I'm recording, I'll just check to see if I've been attacked in the arena, and I fucking had, and that was not planned. I did not plan that. That was not scripted. Fuck me. That was just... Guys... I think that's enough said, really.